Hello everybody, I'd like to welcome you to this video titled Dividing Decimals Fluently. And I want you to get out your math journal pencil and turn your math books to page 135. Also get out your math journal as well, if I have not said that. So let's take a look at this page on 135, and first of all, the two objectives that we have is divide a whole number by a decimal. And then also, we're going to look to be able to divide a decimal by a decimal fluently. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at, first of all, dividing a whole number by a decimal. And we're going to flip over to page 136, and we're going to do the two methods here. Okay, so you can see, first of all, we have 1 divided by 5/10. Okay, so there is the ability to use a bar model for this type of problem. And you can see with this method, you draw the bar model, okay, the 1 bar, and you divide it into tenths. And why do you divide it into tenths? Because you're dividing it by 5/10. Okay, so you divide it into 10 sections. And now you got to figure out how many 5/10 sections are in one whole. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's one 5/10 section. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a total of two 5/10 sections. So we have 1 divided by 5/10 is 2. So in other words, trying to figure out how many 5/10 are in 1. Now, another way we could do this is we could do this turning everything into a fraction. So now we have 1 divided by 5/10 is going to equal 1 divided by 5/10, which would equal 1 times 10 over 5. And we have 1 times 10 is 10. Then we have 5 there. 5 goes into 10 2 times. So those are two different ways that you can set up this type of problem. Now let's take a look at number 3. We're going to do this together. So we'll do this just like we did the other problem with a fraction. You don't really want to do a bar model when you're looking at hundredths here. Okay, so we're taking a look at 75 divided by 15 hundredths. So this is on page 137. So 75 divided by 15 hundredths is the same as 75 divided by 15 over 100. Okay, so some of you may be wondering, how do I know that it's 15 over 100? So what you need to understand is you got to take a look at that 15. When you're writing as a fraction, you just write whatever is to the right of the decimal. You write that number out. So that's going to be your numerator. And then you look to see how many digits are to the right of the decimal. You first of all write the 1 down. I have 2 digits to the right of the decimal, so therefore I'm going to write 2 zeros to the right of my 1. If I had 4 digits to the right of the decimal, I would write 4 zeros after I wrote my 1. Okay, so what that translates into a keep, change, flip, 75 times 100 over 15. Okay, so now we have 75 over 1 times 100 over 15. Now, there's something that you can do whenever you're multiplying fractions. You can cross simplify. So in other words, if I want to take this, I don't really want to do 75 times 100 because that's a really big number, then have to divide 15 into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about what number can go into both 15 and 75. What would be the greatest common factor of those two numbers? And 15 is the greatest common factor of 15 and 75. So that means I'm going to take 15, divide that by 15, that changes it into a 1. 15 divided by 75, that's going to be 5 now. Okay, and this is just something that you can do. You do not have to do this. It may be a way just to simplify the process for you. So now I have 5 times 100, 5 over 1 times 100 over 1. So now I just do 5 times 100, and that gives me 500 there for my answer. Again, that's just a strategy you can use to make it a little bit easier, but if you would just like to multiply 75 times 100, then 1 times 15, and then simplify from there, that's completely fine too. Okay, now we're going to move on to dividing tenths by tenths. All right, so we're going to flip over to page 138, and we're going to work through this problem on page 138. So let's go ahead and get there now. So we're going to take a look at method 2. We have 9/10 divided by 3/10. So we're just going to change those decimals into fractions. So we have 9/10 divided by 3/10. We're going to keep, we're going to change, we're going to flip. 9/10 times 10 over 3. Now again, if you're in the cross simplifying, you can actually just make 10 and 10, turn those into 1. 9 and 3. Okay, so we could do that. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 3 goes into both 3 and 9, so 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So you can see the answer would be 3. Or you could just do it. You keep, you change, you flip. 9 times 10 is 90. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 goes into 90 3 times. So you'll still get your same answer. This is kind of like doing the work at the beginning, and this is saving the work until the end. Okay, so you'll still get the same answer there. So that is 9/10 divided by 3/10. And again, turn both decimals into fractions. And again, you can see I write my 9 for my numerator, and then 1 digit to the right of the decimal, so I'll write my 1 there, and then 1 0. 3 is my numerator. 1, write my 1 there, and then 1 digit to the right of the decimal, so I have just 1 0 there. So that's 9/10 divided by 3/10 is 3. Now we're going to flip over to page 139, and we're going to practice dividing hundredths by hundredths. Okay, so once again, we're going to change these into fractions here. So we have 95 hundredths divided by 5 hundredths. So how to write these as a fraction? So we have 95. And then I write my 1 there. How many digits to the right of the decimal? 2 digits, so I write 2 zeros to the right of my 1 for 100 there. Can divide it by 5. I'm not going to write 0, 5. I'm going to write 5 there. 2 digits to the right of the decimal, 2 zeros to the right of my 1, and the 1 making it a 100. Now remember, I keep, I change, I flip. So we have 95 over 100 times 100 over 5. So once again, you can cross simplify. What number goes into both 100? 100 does. So that takes my 100 and makes it into a 1 for each of these, which is really nice. Now what number goes into both 5 and 95? That's going to be 5. 5 goes into 5 1 time. 5 goes into 95 19 times. Now I have 1 times 19 is 19. 1 times 1 is 1, so an answer of 19 for 95 hundredths divided by 5 hundredths. Now we're going to jump over to page 140, and now we're going to take a look at dividing decimals with 1 or more decimal places. Okay, so with this type of problem, we are just going to do long division with this. So we have 6 and 54 hundredths divided by 1 and 2/10. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to set this up with our division house here. All right, so now what we don't want to do is we can't just divide like this. What we need to do, we need to make that 1 and 2/10 into a whole number. So what do we need to do? We need to move the decimal 1 place to the right, making this number a 12 now. Whatever we do to one number, we must do to the other. So we got to move that decimal to the right there. So now we have 65 and 4/10. I'm going to move my decimal right up to the top here. So whenever you're dividing long division with a decimal, you just move that decimal right up to the top. So now we're dividing 65 and 4/10 divided by 12. Now the steps for long division: divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down. Okay, so does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers as a way to remember that? So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 12, figure out how many times 12 goes into 6. It cannot go into 6. How many times does 12 go into 65? It's going to go 5 times. So we divide. Now it's time to multiply. 5 times 12 is 60. We subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5. We check. 5 is less than 12. And now we bring down our 4. Okay, for 54. Now, my next step is I bring down and I keep going all the way back up to dividing. Now 12 into 54 is going to go 4 times. 4 times 12 is 48. And then we have 6 for the remainder. Now something you cannot have with decimals is a remainder. You have to keep going until you get an even remainder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 0 to the end of my division problem, to my dividend. Remember, that does not add any value at all to your decimal. I'm going to bring that 0 down to a 60. 12 into 60 is 5 times. 5 times 12 is 60. Now we don't have a remainder anymore, so that means this is our answer. So 6 and 54 hundredths divided by 1 and 2/10 gives us 5 and 45 hundredths. So just remember, whenever you're dividing with decimals, you can never have a remainder. It's really important to understand. So this concludes the video on dividing decimals fluently. If you have any questions about this concept, please come and see me.